So we'll begin like we usually do by chanting the three refuges slowly together. Just join in if you'd like. This is a nice ritual that people who have been inspired by the teachings of the Buddha have been doing for a long, long time, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Buddha means taking refuge in awakeness, being awake to Dhamma, the second refuge, being awake to the way it is, the nature of the conditions that are coming and going in our experience. And that intimacy of Buddha being awake with Dhamma, the way it is, allows for Sangha, the third refuge, this skillful, compassionate, nimble, creative activity of our lives, how we're relating, how we're showing up. So let's do the chant and we'll have a guided meditation. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Settle into our samadhi posture, whatever that might look like, where we're happily coming into the experience of the body as a support for the heart, the mind settling. And taking refuge in the ordinary experience of breathing in, breathing out. Let this be a beautiful grounding in the simplicity of breathing in, breathing out, and a way for the mind, for the heart to let go of everything else and just simply be aware of the physicality of breathing in and then the physicality of breathing out. And to appreciate how healing it is to put everything else down. Relax and soften. Realize it doesn't take any physical tension to remember to be aware of breathing in, and then to remember to be aware of breathing out. Be actually interested in this ordinary physical process of breathing in, breathing out. Being aware of the whole body as you're breathing in. Being aware, including the whole body as you're breathing out. And noticing the calming effect of this whole body awareness. Accepting the body as it is with each inhalation, with each exhalation. As if there's a generous, loving yes as you breathe in. And then again, a generous and loving yes to the body as you breathe out each time. And no matter how it is in the body, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, a beautiful, generous yes as we breathe in, feeling the totality of the body. And the same with each exhalation. And if you can, really attune to the calming effect as you breathe in, feeling the whole body. And then again, attune to the calming effect as you breathe out, feeling opening to the whole body. And letting this calm spread and fill the sense of embodiment. It's a healing of the mind and body, a coming together or an integration of mind and body. And it's experienced as a pervasive settledness or calm. Breathing in, experiencing a lightness or buoyancy of the heart, even if it's faint. Just feel that lightness of joy. As you breathe in, connect with the lightness of joy as you breathe out. And again, no need to force anything. Just be curious or interested in that light and buoyant quality of the heart as you breathe in, each time as you breathe out. And if it helps, you can even repeat the word without forcing anything. Just repeat the word joy as you breathe in, or the phrase experiencing joy as you breathe out. So we're just noticing different aspects of the present moment, breathing in, experiencing ease, a more resonant relaxation of the heart, a more resonant contentedness. Breathing in, experiencing ease. Breathing out, experiencing ease. Just be curious. We don't have to force anything. Be interested in ease as you're breathing in. Be interested in the experience of ease as you're breathing out. Again, even if it's very subtle or seemingly in the distance. So we're just breathing in and being interested in contentment and ease, and then feeling the breath going out and practicing being interested in contentment and ease. And again, you can feel that spreading throughout the body and mind. And as this more resonant happiness becomes more apparent, then there's a natural dispassion toward the thinking mind. We just allow thinking to be there in the background, whatever the thoughts might be, because we're abiding in that quality of ease and contentment. We notice the dispassion towards the thinking mind, and the dispassion towards the thinking mind naturally leads to the thinking mind becoming more and more quiet. So just notice the quieting of the mind, the stilling of mental activity to some degree. Breathing in, noticing the relative quiet. Breathing out, noticing the relative quiet of the thinking mind. And naturally, from this space of relative quiet, breathing in, noticing the space of the heart, the space of the mind. Breathing out, noticing the space of the mind, the space of the knowing mind. Not so much what's being experienced, but this simple space of awareness as we breathe in and acknowledging this simple space of the knowing mind as we breathe out. Keep it really simple. And if you need a phrase, you could, as you're breathing in, just be aware of the space of the mind, or knowing is being known. Awareness, breathing out, and the same thing. Just appreciating the space of awareness as we breathe in and breathe out. Breathing in, appreciating the vast space of the present moment, the knowing mind. Breathing out, appreciating, purifying the vast space of the knowing mind. Let it become very simple, free of selfing, self-centered activity, more pure in a sense, more simple, and really allow the heart to abide, to rest, to be in the simplicity with each in-breath, with each out-breath. And to whatever degree it's possible, as you're breathing in, notice the absence of wanting, the absence of wanting the moment to be different than it is. Notice the absence of wanting as you breathe out. So there's a very particular, beautiful peace of not needing things to be different. So notice that peace as you breathe in. Notice the peace of not needing, not wanting things to be different as you breathe out. This has the flavor of the cessation of craving, this peace. Noticing the peace as you breathe in. Noticing the peace of non-craving as you breathe out. Keep it simple. So for a couple more minutes, we're training the mind to be curious about this subtle piece of not needing the moment to be different than it is. So we're breathing in, recognizing that piece, even if it's quite subtle. Breathing out, recognizing and abiding with that peace. So take a little time, adjust. I'm betting some of you recognize that set of instructions. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago in the summer. We had our 8-week Buddhist Studies class on the very comprehensive instructions, mindfulness of breathing instructions. And I also spent a good 6 months teaching it in the weekly practice groups, maybe a year and a half ago, I think. So there's more if you're drawn to those kinds of instructions. And but basically, the meditative process is to learn how to sense the very real, the very accessible piece of the heart, the mind, that has put aside temporarily the very deep habit of craving, wanting things to be different than they are, wanting to become somebody, wanting to get rid of something, wanting to get rid of our knee pain, right? So most of the time, especially during our busy days, our mind is entangled with craving of one kind or another. The craving for some sense experience, the craving to get rid of painful sense experience, the craving to become somebody. And that craving, feeding on experience in that way, relating to experience in that way, we realize when we pay attention is stressful. And this is the second noble truth. There is a cause for this heaviness in my heart. It is this attachment to desire, what we call craving. Craving is not helpful. It's not needed. It should be abandoned, right? This is the process of insight, not me hating craving, but me realizing that it's extra and stressful and should be abandoned. And then realizing when it is abandoned. So when we, and there are many different ways, but when we learn about the meditative process, settling the mind, we can access the state where craving is relatively quiet. That activity we call craving, the mind wanting the moment to be different than it is, or even the mind wanting the good feeling I have not to go away, right? Even that is a disturbance. So when we realize a mind that isn't in conflict with the conditions, then we realize of that particular and in a way unforgettable peace. It's a refined peace, but it's also a very that peace leaves a deep impression in the mind stream, because the heart, in a sense, if the heart were to verbalize it, it's like, oh, that's what I've been looking for. I'm interested in that peace, right? It's a little flavor of where the path leads. And we want to get to know that flavor of the heart where there isn't much craving. Craving has gone quiet. Oh, this is that peace that the Buddha talks about, that my teachers talk about. It feels like this. And we want to understand it naturally. The mind wants to understand it to the nth degree. What is the full, unshakable development of that peace, that ease, that release, the putting down of the stress of craving? And that's often how it's talked about in the tradition. This is now the third noble truth. So just to review for people who haven't memorized these, they're really experiences or perceptions, these four noble truths, where like the Buddha equates the Four Noble Truths as having wise view. So it's an understanding, a way of framing our experience that is considered really skillful. So as we move through our life, we're framing it in terms of, oh, there's suffering. My heart feels bound up. This should be understood. Oh yeah, I've been a good student. I'm really paying attention to this experience I call suffering, whether stress or heaviness of my heart or my mind, heart, feeling burdened, feeling entangled. Oh, this should be understood. This has been understood. So that's the experience of the First Noble Truth. It's really this resonant respect for the experience of dukkha, of suffering, our hearts feeling burdened or entangled, our hearts feeling pushed around by experience, pleasant and unpleasant and neutral experience. We have a reaction to everything. We want to ignore the neutral because it's not interesting, want to hold on to the pleasant stuff, want to get rid of the unpleasant stuff. And so that's all stressful. Even ignoring neutral is stressful, sure, and certainly trying to hold on to the pleasant and trying to get rid of the unpleasant is stressful because we never really get there. We do bump into nice situations where there isn't a lot of unpleasant and there might be a lot of pleasant, but we can't make it last. And all of that is stressful. And that's the dukkha that we realize, I need to get to know this experience. I need to get close. I'm constantly fighting. I'm constantly sort of acting out my habits around my likes and my dislikes and what I don't care about because it's neutral. So now I'm going to really start paying attention because it's relevant. And that work, those, framing this first question or this first insight around there is dukkha, then leads to the second noble truth. There is a cause. The experience of dukkha, the experience of stress, doesn't just arise randomly. It's part of a lawful, natural process, which wisdom can understand. Oh, there is a cause. It's the clinging or the attachment to desire. It's personalizing desire, taking desire personally, what we call craving, right? Oh, there is craving. This craving isn't helpful. It should be abandoned. So this is we're framing our experience with the second noble truth when we're settled and we've been developing a respectful relationship to suffering and stress, and then we can see the more subtle level. Oh, this is a lawful process. There's a cause here. this attachment to desire, craving. This craving isn't helping anybody. It's extra, it's unnecessary. It should be abandoned. This craving has been abandoned. So this is a little bit of the flavor maybe you had near the end of the sit tonight, where you looked at your heart, your mind, the present moment, the space of the present moment, and maybe, depending on how your sit went, maybe noticing, there's no craving going on, no obvious craving going on, or very subtle craving going on. The heart is settled in it not needing things to be different than they are. This is a refined piece of the heart, the mind, not needing things to be different. This should be realized. This should be fully realized. And that's that transition. We first notice craving has been abandoned because, like everything, craving arises due to causes and conditions, attachment to desire. But when we study the experience of craving, study the experience of attachment, then we're removing the ignorance, because now we're just seeing it as a natural phenomena. There is craving. The mind is attached. It looks and feels like this. And that sort of balanced, patient, kind presence, then craving will naturally cease, because it's missing one of the main ingredients for craving, which is ignorance, thinking that this desire is me, and therefore needs to be fulfilled, whatever the desire is, the desire to become, the desire to get rid of, the desire to have more of, or to hold on to. But now, desire is being observed as a natural phenomena instead of desire being taken personally. And so craving will naturally cease without you or me getting rid of it. It ceases because it's being observed with wisdom and patience and kindness, with the stability of present moment awareness. And when craving ceases or fades, goes away, then what arises is the mind, the heart, in a very ordinary sense, that isn't craving. So the third noble truth, there is cessation. There is a mind that is empty of craving, free of craving. A mind where craving has ceased. This mind, this heart should be fully realized. This mind, this heart has been fully realized. So that's how we talk about the experience of the third noble truth. Craving, of course, we have had so many cravings, even today. These cravings, they are naturally being abandoned all the time. And in your small groups, those of you who stick around for the small groups that will transition to at 8:35 tonight, or you find someone to have a conversation with at home later in the week, that it'd be nice to talk about moments, whether it's in a sit or in your daily life, where you've noticed craving, you've seen that it isn't helpful, you've cultivated a stability of non-reactive, non-controlling, wise and patient attention to the attachment, to the craving. There is craving. The mind wants to become, the mind wants to get rid of, the mind wants to be done with. The mind's having a problem with the way it is. It's in conflict with the way it is. And it's like this, and it isn't helping anybody. That's the wisdom piece. Seeing that the craving doesn't make good stuff happen. This is the profound insight. Because when we're in an ignorant place, which is most of the time, we somehow wrongly think that craving makes good stuff happen from an egoic point of view, like the stuff that I want to happen. If I just want it enough, but of course, really wanting something to happen has very little to do, nothing to do really, with it actually happening. Like, I really want ice cream, but that tension of that squeeze of wanting ice cream, does it make my freezer have ice cream all of a sudden. It just makes me tight. So that's what I mean by seeing the dysfunction, the unhelpfulness of craving. That's how we know we're being mindful, wise. And that's what's required. Because if we're not seeing that craving isn't helpful, then we're still entangled with it probably. So we actually have to see that it's not helpful, that it's not contributing, that it should be abandoned. That's the telltale sign we're being mindful with craving. Just like when there's a wholesome state, maybe you remember in that sequence of instructions we went through relatively quickly during the guided sit. And I used the instruction from the Buddha, breathing in, experiencing the space of awareness, experiencing the space of the mind, breathing out, experiencing the space of the mind. In the same way, we then will appreciate something wholesome, like this more subtle experience of the mind, right? We naturally, the mind or wisdom naturally, instead of appreciating craving, it understands that it's not helpful, because that's what refined, wise attention does. When it's aware of something unskillful, it's aware that it's unskillful. When it's aware of something skillful, it appreciates it as being skillful. That's what wisdom naturally does. It sees that wholesome qualities are wholesome and appreciates them. It sees that unwholesome qualities are unwholesome and understands this isn't helping anybody. It should be abandoned. It isn't contributing. It shouldn't be fed. So, a little bit more about the second noble truth, where we're cultivating the stability of awareness with craving. And then this is where we use these perceptions of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, impersonal nature, right? We're looking at craving from an impersonal point of view. So we see that this habit of taking desire personally arises lawfully, conditionally. It isn't an eternal truth. It's something the mind has constructed, is doing. It's stressful. It isn't personal. It's seeing the underlying nature, seeing craving from the point of view of its inconstancy, its unsatisfactoriness, like not really contributing, and its impersonal nature that really sets up the letting go or the abandoning of craving. So when you feel attached in daily life or in a sit, and the attachment seems relatively solid, it's because we haven't stabilized this patient, non-reactive, curious attention, where we're actually seeing the craving as something that comes and goes, is unsatisfactory, and is not self. It's not something we project onto it. It's something, because we're interested, that truth of craving as a conditional or changing thing, as an impersonal, unsatisfactory process, it just starts to shine through. And then letting go or the abandoning of craving naturally follows from understanding. And this is how the mind goes from being attached, identified with the craving, to seeing craving as a natural thing. And then, because we're no longer seduced by the craving, right? Because craving is juicy. Craving, because of the dukkha, the suffering, the tension, it sort of has that feedback loop. Of course, this is about me because it feels so intense. So we get sucked back in to the identifying with craving precisely because it hurts. So that patience is really important, like feeling the squeeze of the craving, of the attachment, but not getting confused by it. Well, of course it's It is what it is. This is what craving feels like. This is what attachment feels like. And then really noticing that flavor of peace that maybe some of you were able to touch into during the guided meditation tonight, like the quiet of the mind, a mind that doesn't need conditions to be different. Oh, this is the flavor of the mind when it's free of craving. It has that peaceful quality. It is the peace of the mind that isn't entangled with craving. That mind is still noticing the phenomena, still noticing the pleasantness and unpleasantness, but it isn't identifying with its likes and dislikes. It's abiding in the peace of non-craving. And, there's always this chicken and egg thing in spiritual practice. Like, it's really, relatively speaking, easy to do the practice when the mind knows the peace of non-craving, because all the little and big habits of taking desire personally and getting entangled with craving really stand out when my heart is really familiar with the peace of non-craving. But when all my mind knows is craving, then craving doesn't stand out. It seems like, well, that's how that's how my heart always feels, And in a way, we kind of long for the intensity of craving because that's what we know. It's what's familiar, and it doesn't strike the heart as being unwholesome, unnecessary, to be abandoned. Right? That's why it's really an insight in the second noble truth when we stabilize awareness with the cause of suffering, craving. It's an insight to see, oh yeah, this should be abandoned. This isn't helping anybody. It's not contributing to anything of value. It should be abandoned. So that's a realization, to recognize that attachment is to be abandoned. And so, in your conversations today or this week when you're talking, sharing your practice, really share about those moments when we're attached and we catch the mind really rationalizing the attachment. Like, oh yeah, no, I need to be attached. I need to be craving this. Craving is useful. Craving is, who I am. So we can start to catch that more and more. And then it's in catching that, then that will inspire the mind to want to stabilize awareness of the craving. That's actually the meditation object. So that we can notice that moment when craving is abandoned, which is that's the full fruition of the second noble truth, when wisdom realizes that, you know what, that particular craving has been abandoned. It isn't operational right now in the heart. It was there a moment ago, but it's not there now. And then that sense of peace, oh, this is the heart without craving, right? So that the third noble truth is there is cessation, there is the heart free of craving. And that's the most common definition of nirvana is the realization, the experience of non-craving. The heart, the mind free of greed, anger, and delusion, the activity of greed, anger, and delusion, right? Free of craving. So, there is cessation. There is this experience of this mind free of craving. This should be fully realized. This has been fully realized. So recognizing that peace, in a sense, is what the heart has aspired to. Whether we realized it or not, all of the things we've pursued, in a way, it was the pursuit of this peace, mostly misguided pursuit, right? But now we're getting a sense of what life is really about, which then we'll go in the last 2 weeks to the fourth noble truth, which is the way. Oh, there is a path that fully develops that peace, this unshakable release, the peace of release. It's a nice way of thinking of it. It's not so much the peace of having something, it's the peace that's there because something's missing. What's missing? Craving is missing. And there's peace because something's not there anymore. This peace should be developed through the Eightfold Path, which is basically integrating the understanding in how we relate to other people, this kind of ethical part of life, how we relate to our own activity of our own mind, and how we understand, how we frame experience. So the gross to the most subtle aspects of our life, we're integrating the insight, the realization of non-craving, how to be in relationship with other people without falling into habits of craving, how to take care of my own mind without falling into habits of craving, reasserting, reestablishing habits of craving, how to understand my experience as a human being without craving. Right? So it's really the path is the integration of the insight. Let me share a little. I gave two things. One I sent out today, which is an excerpt from Ajahn Thanissaro's article, The Far Shore. This is a synonym for Nibbana. So the Buddha used often the most common natural disaster during his time, which would be flooding, because he mostly taught along the Ganges plains, the flat area, the floodplain. And so, they didn't have early warning systems back then, and there would be every probably season, wet season, there would be a lot of flooding when the snows in the Himalaya mountains melted and the rains came, and villages would be swept away. So he used this image of crossing the flood and making it to the far shore as it's a metaphor for the path, right? And so the flood are these habits of craving for sensuality, craving to our fixed views of this and that, craving to become. These are the floods. And then we cross over the flood with the practice, the Noble Eightfold Path, and in particular, wise view. And here, wise view, the most common way the Buddha defined wise view was framing our experience with the Four Noble Truths. There's dukkha, and there's the end of dukkha. That's the short version. This is the issue at hand. There's dukkha, and there's the release from dukkha. And that's actually what my heart cares about as I live my life. Dukkha and its release. And the longer version, as you know, the Four Noble Truths, there is dukkha. It should be understood. It has been understood. There's a cause. It's this attachment to desire. This should be abandoned. It has been abandoned. There is release. This release should be fully realized. It has been fully realized. The insight into the heart free of craving. When we were clearer about the taste of freedom, then we see the path. Oh yeah, I need to live on all levels of my life. The gross level of relating to other people, being involved in community, how I relate to my mind, how I relate to the sort of the deeper understanding. All of that has to be in alignment with the insight into non-craving, the mind free of craving. So that we're learning to be a human being, the stickiness of being a human being, a sexual being, a being that's got to deal with power all the time, navigate it in our jobs, in our relationships, this world that's filled with oppression and suffering, how to inhabit that world without craving, without relying on attachment and the sort of energizing effect of attachment, right? So it's like a complete reorientation of our life. So you can read that article, and in particular that passage, because here Ajahn Thanissaro, this Western Buddhist monk, he's unpacking the term for clinging. Upadana is the Pali word, and it's like sometimes in the tradition, it's the image is fire, and the fuel, the wood, and the how fire clings to its fuel, and it's both craving. Upadana, clinging, is both the flame and the fuel, and the relationship between the flame and the fuel, right? And this is our mind, the very deep habit of our mind, wrongly, in the sense of being the cause for suffering. We're trying to feed on experience. And this could be happening right now. Like if these teachings from the Buddha you're finding, really useful and inspiring, we can very easily fall into the habit of, trying to get something from the teaching, trying to feed on it, being the one who knows what the Buddha was talking about, owning it in some way, becoming the one who knows, being the one who has awakening, that's seeing that as some kind of sense experience that I'm going to have, and it will be mine. Or wanting to get rid of craving, wanting to become the person who gets rid of craving. So this is the very deep habit of burning, being on fire with craving. And what do we want to do? We want to realize that this is the cause for suffering, the attachment. This is not the way. So like when I was saying in the second noble truth, this should be abandoned, it's just the same as the mind realizing this is not the way. Like we're seeing the attachment in the mind. On the surface, because of our habits, we think attachment is functional. But wisdom now understands, you know what? Being attached is not the way. I mean, we have this in little bits, like even in our romantic relationships or desires for promotion at work or getting ahead in life in whatever ways. We see the attachment and we realize how it's counterproductive. Oh, this is not the way. This is just making me tight. This is actually getting in the way of me being more competent, more skillful at whatever I need to do in the moment. This is not the way. This should be abandoned. But we don't know how to abandon it, right? And this is the piece that we really get from the Buddhist teachings, this sort of patient curiosity about this attachment to desire, this clinging, this craving, and especially to notice its changing nature, its unsatisfactory nature, its impersonal nature. To really keep that in view, those perceptions in view as we're looking at attachment. It's changing, right? It's not a fixed thing, because that's the superficial tendency, is to presume that the attachment is just me because it's a constant, it's like identifying with it as a solid thing. But when we see that it's in flux and unsatisfying and impersonal, then it gets abandoned. And then there's some freedom there. There's desire without attachment. Desire is just an enlivening force of living beings, right? It doesn't have to be a problem. The problem comes with the misunderstanding of desire, the attachment, or the personalizing of desire. And then the last thing I want to just mention is just hoping that people will read that article I sent out last week by Thanissaro. Sounds like the other teacher. So this is a female person, a wonderful teacher, teaches with her partner, Kittasaro, and both were monastics in the Ajahn Chah Western tradition for a while, and then took off their monastic robes and became partners and have been a really powerful teaching duo for a long time since then. And this is that article entitled "The Grit That Becomes the Pearl." And I just find Thanissara's talking about the Third Noble Truth near the end of the article very powerful about that process of letting go. The way the Buddha talks about it, is when we're being honest with experience, there's a very natural disenchantment. Disenchantment here doesn't mean that the world or the world of experience is bad. It just means that clinging doesn't contribute anything. So that's what the disenchantment, the dispassion, and the letting go. It's only of the attachment to the world, the enchantment with the world, expecting experience, thinking that experience is something that somebody needs to feed on. And this is such a powerful reorientation that we can be a human being without imagining that we need to feed on the experiences that are happening. They arrive, the experiences, the joys and the sorrows. We let them in. We're intimate. We dance with them. We know that they're pleasant when they're pleasant and that they're unpleasant when they're unpleasant, and neutral when experience is neutral. We're really fully in our life, dancing, participating, but we're not expecting experience to save anybody. Experience is just what it is. It's something that comes and goes and is not self, it's not personal. A lot of times, this is not something to be figured out philosophically. And that gets a little weird when we hear what I just said, and then we try to pretend that experience is impersonal or the pleasantness is impersonal. And the only way we know how to do that from a philosophical point of view is to think that things aren't important, right? It really naturally goes to nihilism, which is just another way to suffer. It's another way to get tied up into knots. So we really want to do this in terms of direct experience, where we realize there is suffering. Well, that's interesting. Let me look at this. Let me feel this. Let me get close. Oh, I'm attached. There's attachment here. This isn't helping. Let me be really patient with this attachment. Let me really feel it. Oh, look at that. The attachment went away. It's been abandoned. There's no more attachment. Oh, it feels like this. Oh, this is a mind I haven't seen very often. A mind that doesn't need things to be different than they are. This should be realized. I really need to fully realize, get close, be intimate with this experience of the mind free of attachment for these moments until it rearises. And on. We take advantage of our life, whatever it delivers. So really nice to be with everybody tonight. Please take a look at those articles. And there is a day-long retreat coming up on Halloween, the 31st, that I'll be leading, 9:30 to 4. And I know Ramesh Sairam, one of our regular Dharma teachers at Common Ground, will be doing his mindfulness and physical pain workshop on Sunday afternoon, the 25th. And there's a lot of other programs that are going to be offered and coming up on the calendar very shortly around the election. So pay attention to the weekly email. And then lastly, Shelley Graff and I are going to be leading a 2-day retreat right after the election, all day Friday, all day Saturday. It must be like the 6th and 7th of November, that Friday and Saturday. You can sign up from our calendar or just look for it, the registration from the weekly